Jeremy Heiser, and this is my informative speech. There are days in our lives that we will never forget. Imagine receiving a phone call that informs you that your dad had a heart attack. You rush to the hospital. When you arrive, the doctor tells you that he's okay, for now, but he will need a heart transplant. Today I will inform you about the process of receiving an organ transplant, alternative options, and the steps patients and doctors take to avoid the rejection according to OPTN guidelines. I'll start by explaining the various steps one must take in order to receive the organ in which they need. In order to go about receiving a transplant, the patient must go through a number of tests and pass each test. The steps are as following. You are evaluated for a transplant by a medical team at a transplant center. 2. If accepted as a candidate for a transplant, you are registered on the National Transplant Waiting List. According to OPTN, the number of those waiting for a transplant is 77,000. To further my point, from January to July 2013, there were 16,000 transplants. That may seem like a large chunk of that 77,000. Only half of what is needed to meet the demand is met. So in accordance, the list continues to grow. You begin organizing your support system. A patient support system is needed because having to go through all these steps and then having surgery is a hard thing to go through by oneself. Our support system could be family, friends, or even a local church. Next, you then begin developing your financial plan. Afterwards, the waiting period begins. It could take hours to even years to get a transplant. Then your transplant takes place. And afterwards, your medical team manages your post-transplant care. Now we'll point out some alternatives if organ transplant is not a viable option. Probably the most popular alternative to a transplant are stem cells. A stem cell is a cell that has no primary function. It develops into a specialized cell like that of a heart, a lung, or a kidney. There are 220 types of cells in the human body that compose their own tissue or organ, and being able to regenerate them through the use of stem cells is a miraculous feat that would not require as much time as waiting for a donor. Another alternative would be to use an artificial organ. An artificial organ is a man-made device that replaces the dysfunctional organ. However, it is not a permanent fix, but it buys time for the patient to wait for an organ donation. Considering I've expended the alternatives to organ transplantation, I'd like to move on to my final point, which I believe to be the most important element of the process, and that is the suppression of the immune system. The suppression of the immune system is crucial during the surgery of having an organ transplanted before and after. If doctors were to carry out the transplant without turning off, or rather shutting down the immune system, recipient's immune system, then the recipient's immune system would see the new organ as a foreign object instead of a threat to the body. As a response, the immune system would fight it and reject the new organ. The goal for suppressing the immune system is to ensure that the new organ will not be rejected. Doctors have the ability in the past to transplant an organ, but have had little success because they are missing a key ingredient to their success. That missing ingredient would be immunosuppressive drugs. A popular choice among these drugs is cyclosporine. Without these drugs, organ transplant would be impossible, and an organ will be rejected in succession. So it would be incredibly important that the organ isn't rejected because each organ donated is scarce and cannot be afforded to be wasted. I've now told you about the processes someone would need to take in order to receive a transplant, the alternatives to a transplant, and what has to be done in order for the transplant to be a success so that the organ will not be rejected. Hopefully what you've learned today will help you if someone you know requires a transplant in the future.